This is an exclusive conversation with retired Lt Gen SL Narasimhan. He was a part of the National Security Advisory Board, has also served as Defense Attaché in the Indian Embassy in China. Thank you so much for joining us to discuss what is of grave importance at a time when we are looking at how countries could weaponize war, can weaponize war, and should they be weaponizing water, and should they be weaponizing water at all? General Narasimhan, there is an RTI request that India today had put, and the response we got on Brahmaputra water, the data, the hydrological data that and as an upper riparian China should be sharing with us, but after the MOU expired and ever since Galwan, I suppose there has been no information sharing between India and China. How worrisome is this entire idea of being a low riparian and not receiving hydrological data, that too over rivers such as Brahmaputra?
Thank you, Geeta, for getting me on this program. As you will be aware, we had two river sharing data agreements with China. One was on Brahmaputra, the other one was on Satluj. The Brahmaputra one was signed in 2002, and then it kept getting renewed in 2008, 13, and 18. And it was due for a renewal in 2023. That didn't happen. In between, you will find that in 2017, when we had the Dolam issue, the Chinese did not actually share the hydrological data. It started again subsequently. And post this 2020 problem that we had with China in eastern Ladakh, this probably seems to have petered off. And we have also not renewed the MOU on water data sharing, hydrological data sharing. And Satluj River, actually, that MOU also was that also expired in 2020. That has also not been renewed. So you find that both these river data sharing agreements are in stress. But if you take your mind back to the agreement that we signed on 24th of October last year, one of the items that was being discussed was the river data sharing agreement arrangement. So that is something I think probably it may be in the works. And if that comes through, then it will start working. However, please also understand this agreement was signed in 2002, that is 23 years ago, when probably India did not have the means to get the data. At the moment, I think we also will have enough capability to see what is the hydrological data that is flowing through Brahmaputra River. So putting these two together, it's good to share the river data by China, definitely. But I'm sure we also have developed the capability to monitor this hydrological data over a period of time. This is how I think I will see this. However, in the bilateral relationship between India and China, this is one of the confidence building measures that was actually part of the confidence building measures. So it will be good to resume this. I'm sure things are being worked at this point in time between the governments.
Well, that's a very important point you make, General Narasimhan. What is the capability that India has to monitor water of the Brahmaputra? Do we have that capability at all? Because there is an India-China expert level mechanism that that both sides, after Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri's visit to China, they said they're going to restart, and they are looking at restarting sharing of hydrological data.
And that is true. The thing is that, basically the Earth resources satellites and some other satellite that we have launched will have this capability, I'm sure. So that is something that I think we need to keep in mind. But as I mentioned to you, between both the countries, China being the upper riparian state, it has not signed a river sharing agreement with any country in the world, and it doesn't intend to do so. And then this is exactly one of the confidence building measures that we were looking at. I mean, both the sides were looking at. Because when you look at confidence building measures, they are very few, and those should be actually we kept going. So this is one of the things that could actually bring some kind of semblance of better relationship between India and China than what is existing at this point in time. I think we would have developed certainly certain capabilities to monitor this data. I'm sure of it.
Right. Also, sir, what are the concerns that India has when it comes to not just sharing of hydrological data, but how China can weaponize water on India's eastern flank?
You see, this report generally comes up once in about 3-4 months. You will find a report from Arunachal Pradesh coming up in the newspaper saying that the water level in Brahmaputra is being affected, or the color of the water coming into Brahmaputra is getting darkened. There are many such things that you will get to hear. I mean, periodically it comes up. The other thing is also because China has announced the building up of a dam close to the Great Bend, which actually where the Brahmaputra goes around the Namcha Barua feature. And that is a deep gorge. And in that place, if he builds up a kind of a dam, it will probably help them to do that. Some reports indicate that it is going to be run of the river. In fact, China has built 8 run of the river dams on Brahmaputra, other than the one that is being talked about in the Great Bend. All those 8 have been run of the river dams. Therefore, there was no storage of water that was being looked at. In this case, if the water is, there are also reports that there are some plans exist to divert the water from the Great Bend area of Brahmaputra towards the northern side where the northern part of China is parched of water. So if it is to be diverted, then obviously it has to be stored. Then only it can be diverted. But however, some reports are indicating that this one also is going to be run of the river. We are exactly not very clear as to what kind of dam that is going to be. If it is going to be storing water, yes, there is a chance that it can be released at unwanted times, and it can be held back at wanted times. So the lower reaches of Brahmaputra also rely on that water for sowing crops, etc., during a particular period, that is April to May, June. Water could be held back, then that could affect some kind of the agricultural products in the northeastern part of India. So there are many angles that you need to look at it. If it is run of the river kind of a dam, I don't think there'll be a major problem that could come up on this.
Right. General Sir, the fact that we are looking at China and specifically India-China, but let's zoom out a little and see what's happening on the Western Front as well. With the Indus Waters Treaty and the water war between India and Pakistan, can China then come to Pakistan's rescue and use Brahmaputra as a tool to arm twist India?
I think these things would have been already thought of. The thing is that when you are expecting a threat from one side, I'm sure you would have done a proper threat analysis of the whole issue of the water. On the Western side, I think you should not actually compare the Indus Water Treaty with the arrangement that we have with China on the other end. With China, we don't have a treaty.
That's right.
We have only an arrangement MOU to share the data. With the Indus Water Treaty, India has been actually requesting Pakistan to come for renegotiations and to review this treaty for a very long time. And Pakistan has been actually forestalling it for a very long time. That is one issue. The second issue is that with China, we don't have issue of terrorism. With Pakistan, we have. That is what the Prime Minister has been saying. Water and blood cannot be flowing together. So the issues are different. So let us not mix it up. And China, as I understand, I've been looking at it for about 25 years now. As I understand, China is not going to do things because Pakistan wants something. China will do things in its own interest. So if you look at it from that point of view, as long as we have the understanding with China on these issues, I don't think these two needs to be linked in some form. However, you can also see that China has been trying to speed up the construction of the dams in Pakistan on the northern rivers. Yes. So that kind of a thing can happen. They can help them out and bring that speeding up the process of building up the dam, etc. But I don't think we need to now look at China actually trying to use water as a weapon. It could use it at some point in time, but not at the behest of Pakistan.
But isn't the difference that in the India-Pakistan case, India is the upper riparian, between China and India, China is the upper riparian, so they do have an upper hand, and they could use that to help their all-weather friend Pakistan, because I was looking at a conversation Victor Gao had on the very same issue on Pakistan, and he said we are all weather friends. No matter what, don't be in any illusion that we'll ever leave Pakistan's side.
That is a very clear indication. I mean, I have been at many track 2 and track 1.5 dialogues where the Chinese have indicated that the China-Pakistan relationship is very deep kind of relationship and nothing will come to spoil it. But also, please take your mind back. What happened in, say, when Pakistan went to China in 1965, 71, 99, and even during the recent kind of thing that we had, the Sindoor we had with Pakistan in the month of May. The point that we need to get is China will help Pakistan with equipment, support in the UN, support politically, etc., etc. But to interfere on her behalf, on Pakistan's behalf, and take the China-India relationship in a different format, I think that is something that we need to carefully look at. China has not done that in the past. When in 1999, when Pakistan went to China, China told Pakistan, you go and sort it out with the Indians. So 65, 71, they didn't do really much. And even in 2025, they rushed PL-15 missiles. That was in the media. I'm sure you would have noticed it. But in addition to that, they would have given probably some intelligence and things like that. They would have helped them out definitely. But one-to-one, I don't think they will enter into some kind of an issue with India separately on that particular issue of supporting Pakistan. They will support them politically, diplomatically, economically, militarily. They'll do everything. But taking on India one-to-one is something that they will think twice in doing that, basically because these two are two different countries to deal with. And India has time and again proven if a territorial integrity, sovereignty issues are affected, it is going to stand up to China. So that is the way in which I think you need to look at this.
Well, again, that's a very important point you make, General Narasimhan, but the fact is that there is no sharing of data right now. What, according to you, was the catalyst? Was Galwan the catalyst? Because that happened in 2020, but the information sharing stopped in 2022.
Fair enough. See, the point, in fact, in my earlier remark, I had mentioned this. In 2017, when we had the Dolam issue, again, that year, China did not share the data. It started subsequently. So whenever some issue happens on the border, this seems to be, there's a disruption in this data sharing that I see. You are right in saying this, that even though the water data sharing was continuing even after Galwan, it stopped in 2022. Basically, because I think there would have been a realization that, the border talks, the talks that were trying to restore the situation in Eastern Ladakh were not progressing the way they need to progress. There would have been many issues based on that. So that is why I said, while we would like to have the data sharing MOU renewed with China, but I'm sure we would have developed our own capabilities to monitor this particular issue is what I personally feel.
Okay, then in terms of the bilateral between India and China right now, we are looking at it, looking at a very difficult time for the two countries. We're looking at a very difficult time between India and Pakistan as well. And we're looking at bettering of maybe talks between US and China. In this entire mix, your reading and assessment of where India stands strategically, geostrategically, and diplomacy-wise as well, sir.
You see, we need to look at this relationship of US, India, China as a purely three bilateral relationships: India, China, India, US, and US, China. India, China, we have our own problems. Everybody knows it. Okay. If you look at what are positives, what are negatives, you'll find the negatives probably will be weighing more. However, between India and US, there have been periods of very good relationships starting from 2005 onwards till now. You find presidents after presidents have been giving the kind of importance to this relationship, and you find the number of these foundational agreements that have been signed, in addition to the defense cooperation agreement that was signed in 2005. So you find since then, the relationship has been improving steadily. Of course, we have the trade relationship, which is a little bit of a stress between India and US, and there's a lot of serious negotiations are on to get into the bilateral trade agreement, not a free trade agreement, but a bilateral trade agreement with US as soon as possible. And the issue is this, that is one part of this. The second part of it is that in this entire region, if you look at it, the US needs partners to handle this particular region. And I think India figures high on that particular list. And when you have that kind of a relationship, every relationship will have certain pluses, certain minuses. But I think in the case of India, US, the pluses actually overweigh the minuses that you may like to look at. On the US-China relationship, let us not forget that it is actually the US and the West that propped up China to come up to this level. And now they are trying to put in a technological denial regime, and also the trade issues that have come up between China and US. If you take your mind back, in the first tenure of Mr. Trump, they signed the phase 1 trade agreement, which still is in the works. I mean, it has not been fulfilled so far. And then they had to go for the phase 2, which nobody is talking about at this point in time. However, the recent talks seem to be indicating that there is some kind of understanding that is going to be achieved between China and US. And even after that, one reads that, the tariffs are going to be somewhere to the tune of 30 to 34%, because 10% across the board is what US has already imposed. In addition to that, after the negotiations, starting from 145% coming down, it is going to rest around somewhere around 34%, 30 to 34%. If you look at it from that point of view, even now it is a high tariff rate that is going to be working between them. So if you look at this in this format, and also US looks at China as a peer competitor, and you look at the way they are looking at their military developments, you see that annual report which the DoD puts out, the Department of Defense puts out. You look at the other reports that have been worked on as far as US-China relations are concerned, you find that US-China relationship, even if you get into a trade kind of an agreement, is still going to be in a mode of competition. So this is the way I think you need to see this. India-China relationship has got its own dynamics. India-US has got its own dynamics. US-China has got its own dynamics. I think you need to see them in this fashion.
Right. Then my final question to you, in this entire scenario, and coming back to the water wars, India might be able to monitor in a way what's happening in the Brahmaputra, but not having real-time data could be a worry. How big a worry is that? And if I could further take it to a conversation that some experts are having, that water could become the next or the new CPEC strategic corridor between China and Pakistan. What do you make of this entire scenario where water could become a very important geostrategic point of agenda?
See, if you take your mind back, I think it is Dr. Abdul Kalam who mentioned about the water wars. The future wars are going to be fought on water. It's something that I think he mentioned a long time ago. And from that time onwards, you find countries like India is also water stressed. Pakistan is worse off as far as water is concerned. And so water has always been a concern for all these countries in this region. Not only that, the Mekong Basin you would have known. The Mekong Basin countries are also actually looking at the water. Coming specifically to your question of how much we love the data, I'm not privy to what is officially available. I mean, I'm out of the country for a couple of months now. But my own understanding is that we would have developed certain amount of capabilities to understand the hydrological data of Brahmaputra. So to that extent, I think this being one of the sensitive issues, in fact, I mentioned to you, every 3-4 months from Arunachal Pradesh, you'll get this report. And then you rush to check what has happened there. So I think over a period of time, this was realized. And I am sure we would have developed the capability to understand the hydrological data in Brahmaputra on a constant basis. I don't know the periodicity, but on a constant basis, I'm sure we'll be able to monitor the data.
Right. General Narasimhan, thank you so much for joining us and explaining to our viewers what the not sharing of hydrological data could really mean and could do to countries such as a lower riparian country like India. But India continues to monitor. It has ways and means of doing so. Whether this is going to be taken to a level where it becomes a geostrategic concern is what we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much for now.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.